2 years into my marriage, Damien Cheng's first love got divorced and flew back home. That same night, the man who used to brag he'd never spent a night away from home didn't come back at all. Funny how time edits your memories. 2 years ago, Damien's mother had slid a 5 million check across the table like she was flicking away dust. Her voice was ice. "Take it! Disappear from my son's life." Back then, I was stupid in the most embarrassing way. I clutched my cheap little love like it was a diamond and said, "I'm not leaving." Now, thinking about it makes me want to laugh until my teeth fall out. Because I wasn't just leaving, I was leaving with a price tag. If she'd offered 5 million for me to vanish when I was only a girlfriend, then after 2 years as Mrs. Cheng, the value of my exit should double. Damien's market value had doubled after all. His company had doubled. His ego had doubled. So did my fee. 10 million. Divorce. Clean break. No drama. At 6 in the morning, I walked barefoot down the corridor in a short satin nightdress and a thin robe. I stopped outside Mrs. Cheng's bedroom door and knocked 3 times. Perfectly timed. Tap, tap, tap. 10 minutes later, the entire Cheng mansion was awake. Mrs. Cheng yanked the door open with her hair a storm of curls and her silk pajamas wrinkled like a crushed flower. Her eyes raked over me, landing on my bare legs as if my knees alone could spike her blood pressure. "Hannah." Her voice was rough with sleep and rage. "It's early. Why aren't you downstairs making breakfast? What are you doing acting insane?" Then she jabbed a finger toward my hemline like she wanted to pin it to the floor. "Wearing something that short and walking out of your room. Are you trying to disgrace the Chung family?" Damien liked women who looked like clean pages, black straight hair, white shirts, long skirts below the knee, innocent like a lily in morning sun. And Mrs. Cheng had always preached her favourite sermon: modesty, restraint, dignity, don't show skin, don't embarrass the husband's family. For 2 years, I almost forgot I had legs of my own, long, pale, and mine. Today, I decided the world could admire them a little. Mrs. Cheng mistook my silence for obedience. She leaned closer, finger nearly poking my face. "Go change, then go make breakfast. Full Chinese breakfast. You'll cook everything yourself." This time, I lifted my hand and brushed her finger away like it was lint. "Mrs. Cheng," I said sweetly, "let's talk business." She froze. "What did you call me?" Her voice jumped an octave. Her eyes narrowed like I was a lunatic in a pretty package. "Hannah, have you been possessed?" A few minutes later, we were in the living room, facing each other like 2 lawyers who'd stopped pretending we were family. I sat back on the sofa, legs crossed, calm as if I was signing an investment contract. Mrs. Cheng sat opposite me. Still uncombed, her carefully maintained, elegant matriarch mask cracked with urgency. "You said—" Her hand tightened into a fist. "You want 10 million. In exchange, you divorce Damien." "Yes," I nodded, crisp and final. "Exactly." Slippers scuffed on the stairs. Tessa Cheng, Damien's younger sister, ambled down, holding her phone, yawning mid-step. When she caught the words, her eyes went wide. "Hannah, are you crazy? You loved my brother so much you lost your pride. Now you want a divorce? You can really do that." I didn't even turn my head. Her voice was just wind. I kept my gaze on Mrs. Cheng. 2 years ago, you offered me 5 million to leave Damien. I refused. Now I've thought it through. After marrying me, his value in the business world doubled, so my leaving price doubles. That's not unreasonable, is it? Tessa scoffed. "Mum, call my brother down. Let him see what she's playing at." I smiled, slow and sharp. "No need to call him. He didn't come home last night." I tilted my head. "If I'm not mistaken, Serena Locke landed yesterday. They're probably celebrating their reunion so hard they forgot the way back." Mrs. Cheng's face drained from white to green. Tessa's face, on the other hand, lit up like she'd won the lottery. Serena's back. That's why my brother was so happy. He even texted me about it. Shut up, Mrs. Cheng hissed, shooting her daughter a murderous look. Of course. A married man running to his first love wasn't a rumour the Cheng family could afford. I tapped the glass coffee table lightly and slid the papers toward Mrs. Cheng. 10 million. I leave with nothing. I don't touch any marital assets. You get a clean, legitimate path to welcome the woman you've wanted for years. I'd say that's sincerity. The moment she heard no marital assets, her eyes sparked. She snatched the document and scanned every line. Black ink on white paper. The wife voluntarily relinquishes all claims to Damien Cheng's property. Then she looked up, suspicion still clinging. Hannah, what trick is this? I don't believe you let go that easily. I sighed as if we were discussing the weather. How do I explain it in a way you'll understand? I leaned forward slightly. It's like your toothbrush. If one day someone used it to scrub a toilet, would you still want to put it in your mouth? Her face twisted like she'd swallowed something rotten. You vulgar country girl, she snapped. No manners, no class. No wonder Damien didn't fall in love with you in 2 years. How could you compare to Serena? Exactly, I smiled wider. So I'm giving you your perfect outcome. 1 arrow, 2 targets. You get the daughter-in-law you like. I get paid. Everyone wins. Better than living with your contempt, his coldness, and my stupidity. Tessa practically bounced. Mom, what are you waiting for? Say yes, Chin. Minutes later, my bank email chimed. Balance increased. 10,000. I pocketed my phone, stood, and nodded politely. Deal, I'll pack now. Soon this house will be spotless again. No unnecessary person taking up space. When I dragged my suitcase downstairs, most of the Cheng family was already gathered in the living room. My father-in-law, Michael Cheng, sat in a crisp suit, hair greyer at the temples than before. He'd never been warm, but he'd been fair. He'd even helped my own family more than once. I pulled my suitcase in front of him and bowed slightly. Dad, this is the last time I'll call you that. Take care of your health. Your leg always hurts. Tell the staff to make bone broth in winter. Eat it hot. It'll warm you up. He stared at me a long time. Then he sighed and motioned me closer. Right there, in front of everyone, he took a bank card from his wallet and pressed it into my palm. There's 10 million in this too, he said quietly. Not much. Take it. Consider it. Compensation. In my head, a very practical thought bloomed like fireworks. I lost a husband. I lost the idea of love. But I held 20 million. My biological father would have to bend his back for 20 years to earn that. So I didn't refuse. I simply smiled. Thank you, Dad. Tessa muttered, shameless, under her breath. I heard it perfectly. I just didn't care. My mood was too good to waste energy on gnats. I tucked the card away, nodded goodbye to the room, and dragged my suitcase out of the Cheng mansion without looking back. 2 hours later, a divorce agreement with my signature lay neatly on Damien Cheng's desk on the top floor of Cheng Group, straight and tidy, like it was smiling at him. His secretary approached carefully. Director Cheng, Mrs. Cheng asked me to deliver this. She said once you sign, notify her. Damien didn't even look up from his contracts. Put it down. I'm busy. Sir, you should at least glance. Damien's sharp brows pulled together. He took the papers, eyes skimming the bold words on the first page. Divorce application. His hand paused for 1 heartbeat. He flipped, and there it was. My name, clean and decisive, Hannah Hayes. No shaking, no hesitation, no pleading. Damien tossed the papers back like they were childish nonsense. His voice went cold. Call her. Tell her I'll be home at 8. She can wait and talk then. Tonight, I'm attending Serena's welcome party. Tell her to stop making noise. The secretary returned a moment later, face awkward. Director Cheng, I think she blocked my number. The air in the office dropped several degrees. Damien narrowed his eyes, pulled out his personal phone, and tapped my contact. He didn't know he'd been the first one I put on my blacklist. Busy tone. He set the phone down slowly, lit a cigarette, smoke veiling the darkness on his face. Get out, he said, because in Damien Cheng's world, work had always been number one. And in mine, at that moment, whatever chaos was happening in the Cheng mansion wasn't worth a single brain cell. I was curled up in the apartment my biological father had bought before my marriage, hugging a teddy bear half my size, crying until my eyes puffed. Nora Quinn, my best friend, finally snapped and shoved a tissue into my hand. "Hannah," she said, exasperated, "are you done crying yet?" I wiped my face messily and collapsed back onto the bear like a wet rag. "I'm divorced, Nora. I'm 25 and already a divorced woman. I sound more miserable than the side character in a trashy drama," I sniffed hard. "And if I remarry someone poorer than Damien, the rich girls in Vane City will laugh me to death." Nora went quiet for 2 seconds. Then she shot up like someone injected her with adrenaline. "Tonight we're going drinking. My cousin's bar just opened. The hot guys there are so packed, it's like a stadium. All premium stock." I lifted my swollen eyes. "Really? Handsome? Handsome like Damien?" Nora almost threw a pillow at my face. "Even if they're not, they're younger, more alive. They'll know how to make you smile." She grabbed my wrist and hauled me up. "Go shower. Put on something sexy. Tonight, we hunt." My cheeks warmed, but what was left to protect? My heart already had holes punched through it. My pride had already been trampled. So I whispered, small but determined, "Okay, let's go." And somewhere far above the city, Damien Cheng was about to learn a lesson no one had ever dared to teach him. The shadow he'd ignored had finally walked away, paid in full, and she wasn't coming back quietly. "Want to marry him?" I'd snarled through my teeth back then. "Then I'll marry him first." That was how it started. I agreed to date Damien Cheng, not because my heart wanted him, but because my pride wanted to stab someone else. I wanted to slap Violet Zhao in the face with the simplest, sharpest proof. The man she was scheming for had chosen me. At the beginning, it was petty. It was a game. It was revenge wrapped in perfume and lipstick. And then, a few months later, the person who fell into the trap was me. I fell so hard it wasn't even romantic. It was ugly. It was total. It was the kind of love that rewires your bones until you can't recognize your own reflection. I loved Damien Cheng. I loved him so much I became someone else. He was calm, rational, a man who ran his life like a board meeting, everything controlled, everything measured, everything approved. Little by little, he edited me. He corrected how I dressed. He smoothed my impulsive edges. He trained my laughter to be softer, my voice to be gentler, my skirts to fall past my knees. He turned me into the good daughter my father had always wished for. Long black hair, pale colours, modest smiles. And because Damien liked it, I let him. I told myself it was love to change. I told myself it was marriage. It was growth, it was maturity, until the day I accidentally opened his laptop, a single photo, saved like a secret. It was a university picture, 3 people in it. Serena Locke wore a white dress, black hair falling straight and pure, standing between Damien and another male student. The background was bright, youthful, innocent. But the moment I looked at that photo, The world shrank until only Serena existed, her shy smile, her glittering eyes, the way her body tilted just slightly toward Damien, as if gravity itself had chosen a side. It didn't scream, it didn't need to. It whispered one cruel truth into my ear. Long before I ever appeared, there had already been a white moonlight in Damien Cheng's heart. And her name was Serena Locke. I went to the mirror that night and stared at my own reflection. Black hair, white dress, gentle face, obedient softness. It hit me like a slap. I wasn't becoming better. I had been copying someone else, and even then, I didn't dare ask him about it. I loved him too much to risk shattering the fragile happiness I'd been holding like a soap bubble. I was terrified that if I opened my mouth, everything would pop, and I'd be left with nothing but wet hands and humiliation. Besides, Serena had gotten married before Damien and I registered our marriage. I kept telling myself, see, she's gone. She's someone else's wife. Damien can't have her, so what am I afraid of? But now it was different. Serena was divorced. Serena was back, and she came back with timing so perfect it felt arranged by fate. Or by someone with power. I thought about last night, Damien escorting her to a welcome party, the possibility of them spending the whole night together. Every time the image flickered in my mind, my tears surged like a broken faucet. Nora Quinn dragged me into the dressing room like a soldier hauling a wounded friend off the battlefield. She yanked open my closet, dug through everything, and finally pulled out a tight black dress with a slit that kissed my thigh. She tossed it at my chest. Then, like she was revealing a weapon, she pulled a brand new lace lingerie set out of a paper bag. "Wear this," she said, deadly serious. "You've lost weight. You look flat as an airport runway. This will fix that. Trust me, even honest men will start lying to themselves when they see you." I hugged the pile of fabric, still red-eyed, voice trembling. Is it okay? I mean, I'm divorced now. Shouldn't I dress more proper, more gentle, more respectable? Nora looked like she wanted to flick me straight off the balcony. "Hannah Hayes, you are 25. She jabbed a finger at my forehead. 25 is the prettiest age you'll ever be. You want proper? Save it for 30 years later when you're 52. Right now, your job is to be gorgeous, to be bright, to make men look twice. Understand?" I went, silent for 3 seconds. Then I nodded. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll start over." That night, 2 25-year-old women stepped into a bar, blazing with neon and bass. Nora wore a red square-neck dress and lethal heels. I wore the black dress like a declaration. Our lipstick was blood red. Our arms were linked. We looked like we belonged to the night. At first, when the music punched into my chest and the lights stuttered like lightning, I still felt nervous. For 2 years, I'd lived as a counterfeit lady. Polite, quiet, proper. Returning to a sexy, dangerous version of myself felt like wearing someone else's skin. But after one cocktail, my mind floated. After the second, my heart loosened. I'd signed the divorce papers. Damien would sign them too. Eagerly, I told myself. Next week at the Civil Bureau, we'd walk separate roads and never owe each other a breath again. Maybe he'd agreed to marry me because Serena had once carved a wound in his heart. Maybe I'd just been a temporary bandage. Now she was back, and tonight I was going to rip myself out of that empty space with my own hands. I didn't know that across the city, a phone call was crashing into Damien's world, forcing him to realise for the first time that the woman he thought belonged in a kitchen was in a bar full of young men, ready to burn every good wife rule he'd pressed onto her. I pressed my lips together and swallowed the last of my tears. I let go of the bar counter. I deliberately tugged my neckline down a fraction, exposing the sharp line of my collarbone like a challenge. My steps wobbled, half from alcohol, half from a heart that felt clawed open. Then I grabbed Nora's hand and pulled her straight into the center of the dance floor. Bodies moved around us, sweaty and close, perfume, liquor, heat. The whole place pulsed with a hazy, dangerous temperature. My hips found the beat like muscle memory. I moved harder, sharper, as if I could stomp the last 2 years of obedience into dust. A handsome guy approached from the bar and lifted his glass toward me. His smile was friendly. His features weren't bad. Strong jaw, deep eyes, and at one angle, something about him vaguely resembled Damien. Maybe that's what possessed me. I reached out, grabbed the open collar of his shirt, 2 buttons undone, and yanked him close. Men's cologne wrapped around me. He smirked, then slid his arm around my waist, like we'd been doing this for years. We swayed together like every other couple around us. I wasn't used to this kind of intimacy with a stranger. My instinct kicked up. Push away, step back, apologize. But then the music cut out. The bass vanished. Silence dropped like a guillotine. Every head in the bar lifted. The front doors slammed open, and a line of men in black suits strode in with earpieces and cold faces. They moved like a private security team in a movie, sharp, coordinated, merciless. Staff got shoved aside. The bar's own guards folded back like paper. The suited men split, and within seconds they had the center dance floor surrounded. Whispers exploded around me. Filming? What is this? Someone's getting dragged out. My drunken haze sobered halfway in a single heartbeat. A terrible, immediate instinct screamed inside my chest. They were here to take someone, and that someone was almost certainly me, because then I saw Damien. He stepped out from behind his men, tall and straight as a blade. No glasses tonight. His nose was sharp, cheekbones tense, the lines of his face so severe even strobing lights couldn't soften them. His expression was so cold the entire bar seemed to drop a few degrees. My heart clenched into a fist. Run, that was all my body knew. I stumbled backward, trying to disappear behind people. But Damien's gaze was a knife. It swept once and locked onto me without a single mistake. I turned, trying to slip into the crowd. Hannah. He said my name. Not loud, just steady, and somehow that was worse. I knew him too well. The angrier Damien got, the calmer his voice became. When we were newly married and I'd come home drunk one night, he'd called me the same way. Flat, composed, terrifyingly controlled. I'd spent the next 2 days barely able to move. The memory pinned my feet to the floor. Only then did I register the young man's arm, still looped around my waist. My skin prickled. I went stiff like someone had hit pause. Damien's eyes dropped, slowly, from my bare throat to my collarbones to my exposed shoulder, and then they stopped, on the stranger's hand on my waist. The air turned sharp. Before I could even form a sentence, Damien reached in, seized the guy's wrist, and flung him aside with a brutal, efficient motion. The man stumbled. Someone gasped. I shrank reflexively, my fear automatic, trained by love. For 2 years, I'd lived by Damien's moods. If he was displeased, it felt like the sky cracked, open, but then something else rose in me, hot and stubborn. We were divorced. I'd signed the papers. I'd taken the money. I'd walked out of his house without looking back. So why was I shaking like I still belonged to him? I lifted my head. For the first time, I met his eyes in front of everyone. A single beam of light fell from above, spotlighting me. Bare shoulders, bare back, white skin almost blinding under the club lights. Damien's assistants and men kept their gazes respectfully elsewhere, pretending I was invisible, but plenty of other men weren't looking away. I had never seen Damien Cheng look so dangerous, and for one ridiculous second a delusion flashed through me, like I was something precious he just had stolen. But I knew the truth. I had never been his treasure. My lashes trembled, my eyes burned. I forced my chin higher and made my voice cold. "Mr. Cheng," I said, each word clean and distant, "did you need something?" Damien stared at me like he was reading a language he'd never bothered to learn. Then, without a word, he shrugged off his suit jacket, stepped in, and draped it over my shoulders, covering me, buttoning me up to the throat as if he could erase every stair in the room, as if he could claim me back with fabric. I tried to pull away. He caught my arm easily, holding me close with one hand like I weighed nothing. "Hannah," he said, still calm, still deadly underneath that calm. "We'll talk at home." Home. The word stabbed. He wasn't here because he missed me. He was here because he felt humiliated, because on paper I was still Mrs. Cheng, because my body in a bar full of young men made him lose face. I swallowed hard and wrenched against him with everything I had. "No," I said, voice shaking but firm. "I'm not going home with you." His brow tightened, his hand pressed through the jacket onto my shoulder, preventing me from stripping it off. "How long are you going to keep making trouble?" "I'm not making trouble." My teeth clenched. "I've decided. I signed the divorce. Don't tell me you can't read." The room was dead silent. His people stared at me like they'd just watched a white rabbit bite a lion. I yanked the jacket off my shoulders and threw it back at him. "We have nothing anymore," I said, trembling, tears threatening to betray my heavy makeup. "So don't control me." Something in Damien's eyes darkened like a door closing, and in that exact moment, while I tried not to cry, while my heart ached with all the reasons he had the nerve to ask for, Damien's voice lowered. "Hannah," he said, strangely muted, almost hoarse. "If you're angry, at least tell me why." I laughed inside my chest, bitter and bleeding. "Why?" "Because you kept her photo like a relic, because you rebuilt me into her shadow, because you held me at night and never gave me a future in the morning, because on my birthday you drank tea with her under sunlight like a perfect poster while I blew out candles alone, because the night she returned, you didn't come home. I did everything you wanted. I made your path clean. I stepped aside. And you still came to drag me back like property." My throat locked. I couldn't speak. Only tears slipped down hot against my cheeks, careful, silent, treacherous. Damien's expression softened a fraction, like he hated my tears more than my rebellion. "Come home," he said again, quieter this time, "with me." And I stood there under the spotlight, shaking, knowing I was one breath away from folding like I always did, knowing I had to choose, for the first time in my life, whether I would keep being his good wife or finally become myself. He stepped forward again and, like he was repeating a habit carved into his bones, draped his suit jacket over my shoulders. The movement was almost identical to last night, as if the moment his fabric touched my skin, I would snap back into the cage he'd designed for me, as if covered automatically meant owned. My whole body was shaking. I could feel how cold my hands had gone, like all the blood had run away out of shame. I forced air into my lungs, gathered every scrap of strength I had left, and shoved him hard. "Damien Cheng," I choked, voice cracking. "Don't touch me. When you touch me, I feel sick." He went still. Silence poured between us like black ink. His face darkened, the kind of darkness that makes your spine go cold. His eyes looked at me like I'd betrayed him, like I was the one who'd broken vows, the one who'd wandered outside the marriage. I hiccuped on a sob. I couldn't look at him for even one more second. I turned and grabbed Nora's hand so tightly my fingers hurt, then stumbled through the crowd, dragging her away like we were escaping a fire. Damien didn't chase. I made it only a few steps before I heard his phone ring behind me, and then his voice. "Hello," soft, controlled, almost gentle. The sound sliced through me like a blade because I knew he didn't speak to me that way anymore. It had to be Serena. Of course it was. So tonight, they could keep dating in peace, while I carried my humiliation through the crowd like a defeated soldier. That night, I slept at Nora's place. After a shower, I threw myself onto her bed, shut my phone off, hugged a pillow, and cried until the room spun. Only then did I fall into a heavy, dead sleep. Nora understood me too well. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer warm, useless comfort. She knocked on my door at set times, placed food on the nightstand like a quiet offering, and slipped away without a word. Monday morning, I woke up before sunrise. I washed my hair. I did my skincare. I blow-dried until every strand lay smooth. I lined my eyes with more precision than any party night. I painted my lips red, red like a warning, red like a wound dressed up as a weapon. I chose a tight red slip dress with thin straps. The hem fell just low enough to hide the trembling at my knees. The colour was so bright it felt like it could burn pain into ash. Nora offered to drive me to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I shook my head. This is the final end between me and him, I said quietly. I want to go myself, sign myself, walk out myself. I looked confident on the outside. Fresh makeup, sharp eyes, vivid lips, like a carefree girl going on a date. No one could see how nauseous my heart felt, how every step inside me was wobbling. Before I left, I turned my phone back on. Notifications flooded in like a stampede. Texts, missed calls, WeChat pings from my parents, my aunt, friends, acquaintances, even unknown numbers hungry for gossip. But from Damien, there was only one message, sent Saturday night. Hannah, Monday, 9:00 a.m. I'll wait for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau. One sentence, cold as a meeting notice. My hand started shaking again. I inhaled slowly until I could breathe without crying. I refused to ruin my makeup. I refused to wash my face and start over. If I was getting divorced, I was going to be beautiful doing it. Violet Zhao, the lifelong rival who lived to watch me fall, was absolutely waiting for my humiliation, and Tessa Cheng was probably sharpening her claws, ready to celebrate the moment I became a joke. Fine, even if I was going to be a divorced woman, I would be the most stunning divorced woman in Vane City. The truth was, Tessa and I hadn't always been enemies. When I first married into the Cheng family, we'd even shopped together sometimes, had fruit bowls in the living room, gossiped about celebrities like sisters. I'd bought her clothes, given her jewellery. Once she'd tried on a pair of jade earrings Damien had gifted me. She smiled at herself in the mirror, eyes bright with greed, and begged me to give them to her. I'd caved. I'd clenched my teeth and handed them over. That night, Damien saw the earrings on his sister and said casually, without malice, "Give those back to your sister-in-law. Your skin isn't as fair as hers. That jade doesn't suit you." Just one sentence, and that was all it took. From that moment on, Tessa hated me like I'd stolen oxygen. Between women, becoming enemies can be absurdly easy. All it takes is someone saying, "You're not as good as her in this one thing." 2 years of snide comments, little traps, silent pressure, swallowed, endured. But starting today, if she dared to touch me again, I would make sure she paid for it with interest. At 8:40 a.m, I arrived. Damien was the kind of man who treated time like law. If he said 9, he meant 9, not 1 minute late. At exactly 9:00, a familiar black Bentley rolled up in front of the building. Damien stepped out, white shirt, black slacks, a dark navy tie. He looked like a corporate recruitment poster. Cold, expensive, perfect. His eyes locked straight on me. I put on my sunglasses, opened my car door, and stepped into the morning sun. Black hair, red lips, white skin, red dress, a small flame walking on heels. I didn't look at him, didn't pause. I picked up my folder and walked inside. He followed right behind me. Inside the lobby, I realised something strange. We were the only couple there to divorce that morning. I remembered what Nora had told me earlier. Her cousin's bar had been inspected and temporarily shut down for disrupting domestic harmony. The bar was so innocent it would have cried a river if it could speak. But if Damien had applied pressure, who would dare push back? Everyone would just close their doors and pretend it was routine. Nora had snorted and whispered, "He's acting like a man who'd put a crown on his head for a woman, just to warn the whole city. So maybe he wasn't completely indifferent." I smiled inside my chest, cold and tired. No, he wasn't protecting me. He was protecting Face. He and the Cheng family would die to defend the thing they loved most, reputation. "Have you signed it?" I asked, chin lifted, tone flat like business. Damien looked at me. His face went a shade paler. Instead of answering, he asked, "Why do you suddenly want a divorce?" "It's not sudden." I stared back through my lenses. "I've thought about it for a long time. I can stand in front of you now and say the word divorce without shaking." His gaze sharpened. "Hannah, are you in love with someone else?" I almost laughed. Classic. A man who's wrong always wants to accuse first, so he doesn't have to confess. "You can stop with the framing," I said, voice tightening. "I'm not the one who betrayed this marriage." He remained calm, calm enough to make someone want to scream. "If there's no one else," he said, "then why divorce?" Did he really want me to list every filthy detail here? His locked photo folder, the afternoon tea picture on my birthday, the business trips that smelled like lies. My heel tapped once against the floor, anger finally boiling over. "Do I look dirty to you?" His eyebrow lifted, maddeningly composed. "Is it because of Serena Locke?" The question hit like an arrow straight into my softest place. My mouth closed. My throat burned. My eyes went hot. Yes, it was because of Serena, but not only Serena. Damien kept going, voice even, like he was explaining a policy to a junior employee. "She fought with her husband, got divorced, came back, and you want to copy her?" He rubbed between his brows, like he was tired from a long meeting, not like his wife had been breaking apart for 2 years. "Hannah, I can indulge my wife being emotional, making a scene outside sometimes, but everything has a limit." He exhaled, slow. "You've had enough. Now you can come home with me." In that moment, it felt like my heart was tossed onto cold stone and casually crushed beneath his shoe. So that's what I was to him. A childish wife. A tantrum. A phase. "You still think I'm making trouble for no reason," I said, voice hoarse. "What do I have to do to make you understand?" I wanted to say, "Damien, I don't want to love you anymore. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I don't want to die inside a marriage where I'm never loved." But the second I saw the faint fatigue on his face, my chest tightened again. I'd chosen that shirt. I'd bought that tie. I'd washed and folded his socks with my own hands. I'd never even washed my biological father's socks. I had loved Damien like that. If he called me baby right now, if he pulled me into his arms and said, "Don't go," I might actually tear up the divorce papers myself. But he didn't. He couldn't even be bothered to coax me anymore, because Serena was back. Men are gentle only with the woman they love, and Hannah Hayes, pathetic, stubborn Hannah, finally had to admit the truth. Her husband had never loved her. I inhaled hard, forcing my tears back. I lifted my chin and made my voice steel. "Damien Cheng," I said. "How many times do I need to repeat it? I want a divorce. No negotiation." His eyes held mine for a long time, so deep it felt like if I looked any longer, he'd read every thought I was trying to hide. Then his mouth tugged, a small laugh, almost like self-mockery. And I didn't care what it meant. "Fine," he said. The process moved so fast my brain barely caught up. I asked for nothing, no assets, no house, no emotional compensation, blank lines on the form. The clerk stared at me like I was either saintly or insane. But the simpler it was, the cleaner it was. Documents checked, information entered. Confirmed, 2 green marriage booklets were set on the counter. This time, the red stamp landed on the word divorce. Thunk, dry and decisive, like a bolt sliding into place. When the clerk handed us the pen for the final signature, I didn't look at Damien. Only after the stamp, the clerk pushed the record toward us, and Damien turned his head slightly, looking at me. Hannah, my mind went blank, as if someone wiped it clean with a damp cloth. No words left, I said, cool and distant. Please hurry. I have things to do. His gaze paused for half a second. Then he said nothing. We each received our divorce certificate. I slid mine into my bag, stood up, put my sunglasses back on, and walked out, heels clicking steadily on stone, not once turning around. Outside, the sunlight was sharp enough to hurt. I got into my car, buckled my seatbelt, and drove away. From start to finish, I never looked at him. It wasn't until I stopped at a red light that I truly came back to myself. My palms were soaked on the steering wheel. I pulled the green booklet from my bag and stared at the words on the cover. Divorce certificate. It hadn't even warmed in my hands before it turned into a stone on my heart. In that instant, all the strength drained out of me. I collapsed forward onto the wheel and sobbed, ugly, shaking sobs. Not the pretty tears from movies, the kind that wrecks your face and claws at your ribs until your chest hurts. Cars behind me honked furiously. The horn sounded like it was drilling into my last nerve, and I still couldn't move. A traffic officer knocked on my window. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need me to call family?" I sucked in air, scraped my voice clean enough to speak, and forced a broken smile. "I'm fine, I'll go, sorry." I wiped my face with the back of my hand, adjusted my sunglasses, and drove off. Back in my apartment, the moment the door closed, the world fell quiet. I showered with water hot enough to fog the mirror, changed into loose clothes, dried my hair, took a glass of water to the sofa, and hugged my huge teddy bear sitting there like a breathing corpse. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone started vibrating. Once, then again, then non-stop. Buzz, pause, buzz, pause, buzz. Like someone on the other end was losing their mind. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to answer. I pressed my face into the teddy bear's belly and pretended the phone didn't exist. But the ringing refused to die. Every 3 seconds it started again, like a fire alarm. Finally, my headache exploded. I grabbed the phone to shut it off, and the name on the screen snapped every cell in my body awake. Violet Zhao. Instantly, my "I'm not afraid to die" spirit flared back to life. I answered like a cat with its tail stepped on. Fur standing, eyes sharp, ready to fight. But her first scream froze me in place. "Hannah Hayes, are you insane? You divorced Damien Cheng because of Cole Huxley." "What?" My brain lagged. "Cole? Who?" I stammered. "I didn't divorce because of Cole Huxley." Cole Huxley was ancient history. First love, teenage stupidity, a name I'd nearly forgotten. "You got your head crushed by a door," Violet shrieked. Cole Huxley just announced he broke up with Janelle Lynn and came back to start a company, and you immediately make a scene and divorce Damien Cheng. You think everyone's blind? My mouth went dry. Oh, so that's what the entire city thought the script was. "I divorced," I said, frowning. "Why are you the one having a meltdown? Isn't this your golden chance? You've been obsessed with Damien like you wanted to build him an altar." There was a choked sob on the line. Her voice cracked into something desperate and ugly. "Hannah!" She spat my name like poison. "What gives you the right? I wanted to marry him so badly I could die, and you marry him when you want. Drop him when you don't. You're only a little whiter than me, a little prettier than me. What else do you have that made him choose you and not me?" She cried and screamed like her lungs were splitting. "Damien married you because he was hurt," she wailed. "He didn't marry me. Tell me, why? Why you?" And as her words stormed into my ear, I sat on my sofa holding a divorce certificate that still felt hot, realizing that my rival wasn't just calling to mock me. She was calling because she couldn't understand the one thing I couldn't explain either: how a man like Damien Cheng could treat marriage like a transaction and still look at me like I was the one who'd stolen something from him. The phone in my hand made me want to cry even harder, because suddenly I understood something humiliating. Everyone had known. Everyone in Vane City had known that the reason Damien Cheng married so abruptly back then was because he'd been heartbroken. Everyone except me. I had been the idiot, twirling in front of mirrors, picking a wedding dress, convincing myself it was love. Heaven's special favour, a fairy tale delivered to me because I'd fought hard enough for it. The night before the wedding, I'd been so excited I couldn't sleep. I rolled around like a child on sugar, smiling even inside my dreams. Now, when I looked back, it felt like the entire city had been watching me the way you watch a girl volunteer to be a substitute, a stand-in, a willing replacement. I hung up, and at that point, the strangest thing happened. My tears stopped. Not because I was healed, because I'd reached that numb cliff where you can't even cry anymore. Like the well inside you has cracked dry. I stared at the teddy bear on my sofa. It was the last piece of evidence from my naive era, the era when I still believed in love without conditions. Back when Damien and I had just started dating, it had been Children's Day and I'd insisted he buy me a teddy bear. I said I wanted to make up for a childhood I'd never really had. Damien had looked at me like I was ridiculous, like I was a grown woman asking for a toy, but in the end, he'd gone himself, walked into my apartment carrying a massive bear in, his arms awkward and expensive, like a CEO doing charity work. I treasured it. I slept hugging it every night, telling myself it was the soft version of him. Now, I don't even want your dad anymore. I sniffed at the bear. So you, a stuffed animal, can get lost too. I grabbed it by the ear, sprang up, and stormed toward the door, fully intending to throw it into the hallway trash like it had personally betrayed me. The door swung open. The words, "Get lost," were still on my tongue when I froze. A familiar face stood there, bright, clean-cut, wearing a warm smile like time had never moved. Cole Huxley. He grinned, opened his arms, and pulled me straight into a hug, as if we were still 18 and stupid. "Hannah," he said, voice full of sunshine. "I'm back." I stood there, stunned, and at that exact moment, behind Cole, the elevator made a dry little chime. Ding! The doors slid open slowly. A tall, straight silhouette appeared inside. Damien. Cheng. I swear I heard the teddy bear hit the floor with a soft, stupid thump. "Hannah, are you okay?" Cole asked gently, his hand sliding to my shoulder like he had every right to comfort me. My entire body turned to stone. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't even push him away. All I could do was stare at Damien standing inside the elevator, his eyes cold enough to crack glass. Cole finally sensed something wrong. He loosened his hold, his smile stiffening, and turned his head. The friendliness on his face folded back into caution the second he met Damien's gaze. And Damien's gaze, it wasn't just cold. It was thin ice stretched over deep water. Touch it, and you'd freeze, then drown. My teeth started to chatter. Pure instinct made me step back, trying to slam the door and hide inside like an ostrich burying its head in the sand. But Cole's hand suddenly caught my wrist. My reflex betrayed me. I looked at Damien. His face was dark. His lips were pressed into a hard line. A vein pulsed at his temple like he was holding rage in his teeth. "Hannah," he said my name, nothing else. It was enough. Electricity shot through me. I yanked my wrist free from Cole like it burned. "It's not," I panicked. "It's not what you think. I didn't know he was outside. I opened the door and he just hugged me. I didn't even have time to—" The faster I spoke, the messier it got. Words tripped over each other. Sentence 1 collided with sentence 2. Nothing came out clean. "Damien, I don't even know how to explain anymore. Why did these two men choose the exact same moment to show up? One was the ex-husband I'd just divorced at the Civil Affairs Bureau. One was the first love from my reckless youth, so distant I'd nearly forgotten his name. Even more absurd, Violet Zhao truly believed I'd divorced because of Cole. And the most absurd thing of all, Damien had just witnessed, with his own eyes, the scene that fit that rumour perfectly. Hannah Hayes, freshly divorced, getting hugged by her ex at her own front door. My head throbbed. My vision swam. So I snapped. I screamed, raw and sharp. "I don't care anymore! Think whatever you want!" Then I turned to bolt inside, determined to bury myself under a blanket for a week and see no one ever again. But I took one step and the world went black around the edges. The ceiling spun. The floor tilted. In that moment, every CEO romance novel I'd ever read in college sprinted through my mind in a neat little line, as if my brain was flipping pages at high speed. And like a professional female lead, I chose a strategic fainting position. I angled myself toward the teddy bear on the floor, so if no one caught me, at least I'd land on something soft. "Hannah!" I shut my eyes. I heard Cole's panicked voice calling my name, but the arms that caught me first, the arms that wrapped around me in one hard, sure motion, carried a faint scent of cigarettes and that painfully familiar dark wood cologne. Strong, steady, unforgiving. Damien. My knees buckled and he held all of me, and the most ridiculous part, the second I felt him. I felt safe. I let my eyes stay closed. I went quiet. I let him carry me like a fragile heroine on a book cover, as if I hadn't just thrown his jacket back at him in a bar 2 nights ago. It wasn't until I was lowered into the back seat of a car, the engine starting, the city sliding by, that I finally cracked my eyes open. "Hey," I whispered, dry. "Where are you taking me?" "Hospital." Damien's voice was ice. He leaned forward slightly. "Driver, straight to the nearest hospital." "No!" I lunged up and grabbed his sleeve. "Don't. Damien, listen. I was pretending. I'm fine. I don't need a hospital." His face went darker. "Hannah." I avoided his eyes, my voice small and fast. "It was really a misunderstanding. I didn't know Cole was outside. I just opened the door and he hugged me. I didn't even have time to push him away before you showed up." He looked at me, expression unreadable. "Are you explaining yourself to me?" "What else am I doing?" I lifted my chin, forcing steel into my voice. "I'm not going to get labelled a cheater out of nowhere. And Cole and I broke up a long time ago. We haven't spoken in years. The divorce has nothing to do with him." Damien's mouth tugged. Half a cold smile, half something sharper. "So you're rushing to protect him already?" "What are you talking about?" I snapped, exhausted. "I'm telling the truth." His eyes narrowed. "Hannah, you'd better not lie to me." The driver in the front seat stayed silent, suddenly very interested in being a mute statue. Damien's gaze swept over me once, quick and hard. "And if you're fine," he said flatly, "get out of the car." The words stabbed like a needle straight into my heart. I bit my lip and turned my head, staring at his profile, the sharp jaw, the high bridge of his nose. When he frowned, that vein at his temple reappeared like a warning sign. Back when I was stupidly in love, I'd loved kissing his throat, his collarbone. Every time my mouth brushed his neck, his control would crack like a switch had been flipped. But now, the thought that Serena might have done the same thing, kissing the same skin, triggering the same hunger, made my stomach turn. I opened the door and stepped out without a word. I didn't look back, so I didn't see it. Through the tinted glass, Damien's eyes stayed on my back long after I walked away, long after I disappeared behind the building door. My mood collapsed for a full week. During that time, Cole tried everything: calls, texts, emails. He even left flowers by my door like he was auditioning for a redemption arc. I rejected all of it. I refused to be the heroine in any messy novel ever again. At least not right now. Right now, I wanted to be a normal divorced woman. Normal, except 20 million richer. And normal, except apparently far more dangerous in men's eyes than I'd ever been before. I stayed inside for a week until Nora finally snapped. She barged in with her bag like a storm and hauled me up like she was yanking a comforter off a bed. Get up, we're shopping, afternoon tea, mood reset, immediately. And I got dragged out into the street. We went feral in the name of consumer therapy. Bags, dresses, shoes, lipstick. The more I swiped my card, the better my face looked. Nothing heals a woman faster than spending money, especially when the money is yours and it tastes like revenge. At the tea shop, I ordered a giant taro milk tea with extra pearls. I shoved in the straw, ready to take one good drink to make life less bitter. When a slim shadow stopped in front of me, I looked up. Serena Locke. She stared at me with slightly apologetic eyes and a voice so light it sounded like wind. Hannah. She said my name like we were close, like she had the right. I studied her quietly. Long straight black hair, a beige long dress, soft makeup. Not dazzling, not sharp, just gentle. The kind of beauty that makes men immediately want to play protector for the rest of their lives. I laughed inside. Since when were we best friends from high school? Since when did she get to say my name like that? What do you want? I asked calmly. Can we talk for a moment? No. The refusal came out fast and light, like a door clicking shut. Serena's eyes reddened instantly, trembling like a classic movie heroine with a white handkerchief missing. Oh no, if she cried in public, I could already hear tomorrow's gossip. Hannah bullied Damien's poor childhood sweetheart. I set my drink down quickly and changed my tone. Ms. Locke, if you insist on talking, go sit over there. It's quieter, and make it quick. Serena nodded obediently, eyes wet, like a rabbit's. Okay, I'll listen. I glanced at Nora. Nora glanced at me. We didn't speak, but the same word flashed in both our eyes. Defeat. No wonder Damien cared. This kind of fragile, pure, weak lotus act, if I were a man, I'd probably soften too. A tightness pressed into my chest. I remembered myself 2 years ago, forcing gentle manners, soft voice, polite smiles to please the Chung family. Looking back, I must have looked stupid beyond words. Serena didn't have to force it. She was gentle like breathing, like she was born to sit under warm yellow light and tilt her head while saying, I'm sorry. No wonder I'd given Damien my heart, my time, my youth, even reshaped my entire appearance to match his taste, and still couldn't buy 1 ounce of real love. We sat in a quieter corner. Before I could speak, Serena went straight for the dramatic opening. Hannah, she said softly, I know everything is because of me, that you and Damien divorced. I almost wanted to applaud. Textbook opening, chapter 1 of every CEO romance novel I'd ever read. I curved my lips into a bright smile. Yes, I said pleasantly, it's because of you. She froze, clearly not expecting me to admit it so cleanly. Then her eyes flooded. She reached for my hand, voice shaking like she was about to shatter. Hannah, don't misunderstand. Damien and I are just old classmates. He helped me because of friendship, and if there was anything between us, it was a long time ago. You don't need to take it to heart. How guilty I feel, she whispered, squeezing my fingers. That your sudden divorce happened. If it's because of me that you two fought, I'll never forgive myself. I looked at her, cold inside, and kept my faint smile on the outside. You understand that so well, I said gently. So why were you getting close to a married man? Her eyes widened. If you feel guilty, I continued, voice sweet. Why did you let him stay at your place? Is someone else's husband warmer to sleep with? Serena went rigid. Hannah, you misunderstood. What part did I misunderstand? I leaned back in my chair. You two were just under one blanket, discussing philosophy, I guess. She swallowed, forcing her voice softer, more pathetic. I was emotionally unstable after my divorce. I wasn't used to the climate when I first came back. Damien was worried, so he stayed. A tear trembled at her lashes like it had been rehearsed. Hannah, really, everything between us is clean. We didn't do anything. If we had feelings like you think, I would have married him back then. Then she tilted her head, and her tone became gentle in a new way, gentle like a teacher correcting a child. Damien is in a very critical stage of his career. He's extremely busy. Don't make trouble right now. You're 25. You're not little anymore. He once said you were immature, but you've been married 2 years. You should be more understanding. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. My own father didn't lecture me this boldly. I wanted to ask, are you my mother now? Are you done? I asked, lips lifting. If you're done, I'm leaving. Hannah, I mean well. I don't want to see your marriage break. Damien is very important to my life. I want him to be happy. Damien and I already signed the divorce. I looked straight at her. If you want him happy, go marry him. Ms. Locke, I said with a smile as calm as cold tea, bring him home. He'll be happy. His mother will be happy. His sister will throw fireworks. A perfect reunion. Congratulations in advance. Congratulations, future Mrs. Cheng. My smile stayed, but under the table my hand was clenched so hard my knuckles went white, my palm burning. No matter how much it hurt, I refused to cry in front of her. I could picture Damien perfectly, mocking me in front of his white moonlight. Hannah is childish. Hannah is dramatic. Hannah doesn't understand. But who married me? Who promised to treat me well, to take care of me, to make sure I never suffered? Before the wedding, he'd followed me to my mother's grave, knelt down and sworn he would spoil Nini like a child forever, never let me feel wronged. And then he became the first one to call me childish. For 2 years, I woke early to make breakfast. I managed the house. I cleaned Tessa's room. I followed his mother around like unpaid staff, carrying bags, pouring water, sitting through card games and laughing on cue. I went with his father for checkups and learned to cook medicinal soups for his joints. When Damien got drunk, I stayed up making hangover tea. When he travelled for a month, I missed him until I cried, but I didn't dare call, because I didn't want to be annoying. His time at home was so rare I could count it. My world stopped revolving around one man and started revolving around the entire Cheng family. No matter how they treated me, I endured. Because I loved him. I loved him so hard I even loved the roads he walked, even loved the contempt in their eyes. And if I ever acted spoiled or stubborn, it was only because I wanted my husband to look at me, just once, to frown because of me, just once. But Damien, always distant, always serious. Only when he wanted me did he kiss me, whisper sweet words. The rest of the time he was colder than a stranger. So how understanding did I need to be? How much more grown-up did I have to become to earn basic love? For more than 2 years, I hadn't had a single day of real happiness. And now, after I finally demanded divorce, the most important woman in his life came here to preach at me, implying I was the one making trouble. Who did I owe? Why did I have to endure? A clay statue has 3 parts temper. If Serena dared to poke me one more time, I genuinely wouldn't mind flipping the table right there for both families to watch. But she didn't give me the chance. Maybe my words had hit her too hard, because her face went white, paper white. Her eyes soaked, her body swaying like she might faint. I was about to turn to Nora for help when Serena suddenly reached toward me. By instinct, I thought she was going to slap me. I shoved her hand away, and she stumbled, then collapsed to the floor like a soft flower dropped from a vase. "Serena!" Nora cried, rushing over. We bent to help her up, but Serena clutched her stomach, face drained, voice trembling and weak. "Please, call an ambulance. I'm pregnant. I'm still taking medication to protect the baby." Pregnant. The word hit my ears like thunder. Nora's eyes snapped to me, huge with shock. And after a few blank seconds, something horrible clicked into place in my mind. Damien and Serena hadn't just gotten close recently. Last year on my birthday, they'd been together overseas. This year, he'd travelled to the same city where she lived. He'd spent resources, connections, his company's best legal team to help her divorce across borders. So the baby in her belly could be his. All the calm I'd forced, all the coldness, all the letting go I'd staged for myself, shattered like glass thrown on stone. My vision blackened. Nora grabbed my hand, frantic, shaking me. "Hannah, don't scare me. If you need to cry, then cry. Don't do this. I'm scared." Tears surged out of me, hot and unstoppable, but my throat felt like an invisible hand was choking it closed. I couldn't even make a sound. I just sat there, drowning silently, while Serena lay on the floor with her hand on her stomach, and the whole world tilted, as if the only thing left standing was the cruel, obvious question I'd been avoiding for years. If Damien never wanted a child with me, was it because he was saving fatherhood for the woman he actually loved? I couldn't cry out loud. I couldn't form a single sentence. My chest throbbed, as if my heart had been cut into tiny pieces and shoved into a box too small to breathe in, and my mind, cruel, disobedient, kept forcing images onto me like a punishment reel I couldn't pause. Damien in Serena's bed, Damien's arms around her waist, Damien bending down to kiss her forehead, her eyelids, her lips. Damien whispering, "Don't be afraid. I'm here," words he had never once given me, not even on the nights I lay awake beside him, swallowing loneliness like medicine. Serena was rushed away. A nurse pushed her into an examination room. Meanwhile, my own lower abdomen felt heavy, dull, wrong, maybe from the iced drink, maybe from the sprint, maybe from shock. I went to the restroom on shaking legs, locked myself inside and looked down, a dark red streak. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Then I forced air into my lungs and told myself it was just my period arriving, early. Stress did that. Cold drinks did that. Running did that. I cleaned up with trembling hands, stuck on a spare pad, washed my face until the cold water burned, and walked back out into the hallway with my lips pressed tight, like a soldier stitching herself up mid-battle. The elevator doors slid open. Damien stepped out fast. His tie was crooked, his hair slightly disordered, and his face was tight with a tension I'd almost never seen on him. He didn't stop to scan the hall. He didn't hesitate. He strode straight toward the examination room like every step mattered, like the ground itself might split if he didn't get there in time. In that moment, something inside me finally understood. So he could be frantic for a woman. He could look panicked. He could lose control. It was just that the woman had never been me. My knees softened. I had to brace my palm against the cold white wall to keep from sinking. I stood there, breathing shallowly, watching his back disappear behind the exam room door. Only when he was gone did I turn away. I left the hospital like a ghost, the kind that still walks but has already died inside. On the way home, my phone rang. "Dad, Hannah," he said, voice hoarse, exhausted in a way that sounded older than his age. "You and Damien were fine. Why are you demanding a divorce?" I stood on the sidewalk, sunlight pouring down like it wanted to burn me clean. "Because of him these past few years," Dad continued, each word heavy, bitter, practical. "I managed to keep a few deals alive. Now you've divorced him. They cancelled projects, Hannah. I just lost $2 billion. $2 billion. What am I supposed to do?" My fingers clenched around the phone until my bones hurt. So that was the math of my life. I divorced Damien and gained 20 million. Dad lost Damien and lost 20 billion. One side plus, one side minus. In the end, it still came out to a neat, humiliating zero. Without the golden son-in-law to lean on, my father's career started sliding downhill like a car with no brakes. I stared up at the bleached white sky and thought of an old line I'd heard once, long before I learned what it meant. If it isn't in your fate, forcing it is useless. I couldn't bear the idea of my aging father scrambling everywhere because of me, so I started sending out resumes. I had studied design, but for 2 years as Mrs. Cheng, my experience was choosing Damien's ties, matching his suits, decorating a house to fit his preferences. Real work experience? Practically zero. Most companies rejected me politely. Still, maybe heaven wasn't completely heartless. A mid-sized advertising firm finally took me as an intern. The pay was small, the work was endless. Dad had spoiled me since I was little. Mum died early and he never remarried because he didn't want me to feel wronged. He raised me with his own hands, never letting me suffer, which was exactly why I'd grown into a half-formed princess, soft, weak, too easy to love, too easy to break. Work was hard, but I could grit my teeth through hard. What I couldn't swallow was the pain sitting in my heart like a stone, especially when, on some random bright afternoon, Tessa Cheng used a burner account to send me a few photos, screenshots from Serena's social media. One showed Serena with her hand resting gently on her stomach, her lips curved into a peaceful, grateful smile. The caption underneath read, "Safe and sound, lucky to have him. Thank you, life, for giving me someone like this, a love like this, always by my side." I didn't react. I simply blocked the account that sent it. After that, Serena's soft little lotus feed went quiet for a while. I threw myself into overtime, extra shifts, more projects, anything just to avoid going home to 4 walls. Anything just to keep my mind too tired to imagine things. Until one night, stumbling with a cup of water near the office purifier, my vision suddenly dimmed, then everything turned black. When I woke up, the ceiling was pure white. The smell of disinfectant slammed into my nose. I was on a hospital bed, an IV needle in my arm, cold spreading through my veins like winter. Nora sat beside me. The moment she saw my eyes open, she lunged forward like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Hannah, you scared me to death. The doctor told me to stay calm. Calm my ass," she blurted, voice cracking. A doctor walked in, checked the chart and looked up at me. "Ms. Hayes," he said calmly, "you're about 5 weeks pregnant." The world went silent. I didn't even blink. Nora's mouth dropped open. Her hand twitched like she was about to call Damien on the spot. I grabbed her wrist hard. "Don't call him." "But—" "Nora," I whispered, voice rough. If he couldn't even keep me in his eyes when I was carrying his name, do you think he'll love this baby? "He doesn't love me," I said, staring at the blank ceiling. "He won't love my child either." "If we tell him," I continued, swallowing something sharp, "he'll think I'm copying Serena, like even getting pregnant is something I have to imitate from the most important woman in his life." Nora looked at my pale face and burst into tears. I tried to lift my hand to comfort her, but the moment I opened my mouth, my own tears poured out first, fast, humiliating, unstoppable. I didn't want this baby. I didn't want it to be like me, spending a lifetime never receiving full love from anyone, always trying harder, always guessing people's hearts. But I couldn't be cruel. This was my baby, Damien's baby. If it was a girl, would he love her a little? If it was a boy, would he grow tall and handsome and cold like Damien, with that same sharp jaw and distant eyes? I curled into myself on the bed, one hand pressing my stomach as if I could protect it from my own thoughts. I couldn't think any further. Even imagining the future made my heart ache until I couldn't breathe. Then I heard the door open. I assumed it was Cole coming back, again, stubborn, persistent, refusing to accept no. Exhausted, I mumbled without looking up. Cole Huxley. How many times do I have to say it? I'm not getting back together with you. No one answered. The door closed quietly, almost politely. I opened my eyes. Damien Cheng stood by my bed, one hand still hanging near the doorknob. He was in his usual black suit, white shirt, dark tie, everything perfectly assembled, everything I used to pick and match for him, piece by piece. He wore his glasses. He looked like he'd come straight from the office, fatigue still sitting on his face like a shadow. He was thinner. The dark circles under his eyes were deeper, as if he hadn't slept for days. I turned my face away, refusing to meet his gaze. I knew him too well. He was the kind of man who would ruin his own body for work and pretend it didn't matter. Nora stood nearby, voice cautious. She wasn't feeling well, so she was admitted. The doctor said she needs rest. Damien walked over, pulled a chair, and sat down beside my bed like it was normal, like we hadn't walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau holding divorce certificates. His hand reached for mine. My IV hand was icy. The skin was tight, the pulse weak. He frowned slightly. Why are your hands so cold? I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to pull away. He tightened his grip instead, enclosing my hand fully in his palm, warming it like he had the right. Nini. He called me by that old name, and my nose stung instantly, like my body had been waiting to break. Even with my eyes shut tight, tears slid out at the corners. The company's been busy, he said slowly, like he was stepping around something fragile. You know that? I didn't answer. He kept going anyway. But I can't focus. Hannah, he said, voice low, worn. I didn't come to see you these past days because I was trying to think clearly. Why you insisted on divorce? My tears soaked into the pillow in silence. At first I thought it was because of Cole. I thought you went back to him and that's why you wanted to leave. He paused, and when he spoke again, there was something in his voice I almost never heard. Regret. I was so angry enough to lose my head. So I agreed. I opened my eyes and looked at him. Damien, do you know how long you've been wrong? You were wrong because you never once tried to understand me. He squeezed my hand tighter, eyes heavy. I know I wronged you, Nini. I didn't understand everything. I shook my head hard. He didn't understand. He would never truly understand why I had to divorce, because I was stubborn. My pride was sharp enough to cut. I couldn't tolerate sand in my eyes, couldn't tolerate humiliation in my marriage. I could hurt until I was half dead, but I could not live in a marriage where I swallowed shame every day. I know these 2 years. I neglected you because of work. I missed a lot. I kept shaking my head. It wasn't work, I rasped. He went quiet for a moment, then spoke again. I sent Tessa overseas to study. He said it like a verdict. Her monthly allowance is $500. Everything else, she earns herself. I stared at him, stunned. Damien had only one sister. He'd always doted on her. $500 was enough for a normal student, but for a princess who spent money like water, it wasn't even enough for a decent dress. If you hadn't demanded divorce, Damien said, eyes dark, I might have let her fool me for a long time. His gaze was cold, and underneath it, something like remorse. Truthfully, I'd never blamed him for Tessa. She was good at acting. Whenever Damien was home, she became the sweet, cultured little sister, poetry and tea and innocent smiles. And I never complained. I didn't want to distract him with household nonsense. I thought, if I can endure it, I will. But my divorce had popped that long, rotten blister. Tessa got arrogant. She exposed herself in front of him. When she learns to respect you as my wife, Damien said, staring straight into my eyes, then we talk. It doesn't have to be that serious, I whispered. She just doesn't like me as her sister-in-law. It's not a crime. Doesn't like you. Damien's voice went flat. She can learn. Then he said the sentence that almost made my throat close. My wife is only one person. He looked at me as if the world was simple. It's you, Hannah Hayes. I let out a small laugh that hurt even my lips. And Serena Locke? I asked softly. Haven't you always liked her? Damien frowned and tapped my forehead lightly, like I was being ridiculous. Who told you I like her? Then why was her photo saved on your computer? My voice shook. Why did you help her divorce? Why did you travel for work on my birthday and end up drinking tea with her overseas? I couldn't even get a happy birthday from you. I had never dared to ask these things outright before. Saying them now felt like ripping off my own skin. Photo? Damien lifted a brow. There is a photo in my folder, yes, but he pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then held the screen close to me. You mean this one? It was the exact photo I'd seen on his laptop. Serena stood in the center, smiling softly, head tilted. I nodded quickly, heart pounding. That one. Damien stared at it for 2 seconds. Then he laughed. A real laugh. Damien almost never laughed. This man was built from steel and silence. In 2 years of marriage, I could count his smiles on one hand. I froze, just watching him. He took off his glasses, shook his head like he was helpless, and brushed a few messy strands of hair from my forehead. Idiot, he murmured. One word, so soft it made me dizzy. Look again, he said. Top left corner. Do you see someone you know? I wiped my tears quickly and squinted at the screen. Top left, blurry, half out of focus, 2 figures, a couple. The girl had dark blue-black dyed hair, a camisole top, a short pleated skirt, lifting a drink with a bright grin. Exactly like the most popular girl in my department back then. Beside her was a tall boy with broad shoulders, leaning in, looking at her like she was the only thing worth seeing. The shock hit me so hard I almost forgot to breathe. That girl was me. My eyes widened. Why am I in that photo? And the boy beside me, looking closer, was Cole Huxley in college, back when we held hands across campus, like we owned the world. I stared at Damien, completely lost. What is this? I went back to school for something, Damien said, tone casual, but there was a faint edge to it. Something not quite pleased. I saw you near the stadium. I was going to say hello, he continued, eyes steady, and then your boyfriend showed up. His voice was flat, but the air between us suddenly carried the faintest scent of vinegar. Jealousy. I frowned, refusing to accept it. You're making things up. I didn't even know who you were back then. We first met at the blind date later. Damien's gaze locked onto me, deep, heavy, almost accusing. Hannah, he said slowly, you stood me up first. And you forgot me first. My brain stopped. A clean, total crash. He watched me for a few seconds. When he realized I truly didn't remember, his expression cooled, the rare softness draining away like it had never existed. If you don't remember, forget it, he said. Rest. Damien, I reached out on instinct and grabbed his sleeve, my voice going soft without permission, dangerously close to the way I used to cling to him. The moment my fingers touched his fabric, I snapped awake. We were divorced. I released him immediately, mortified, wishing I could crawl under the bed. He glanced at his watch. "I have a meeting," he said. "Important." Then, as if we were still married, as if he still had a place in my schedule, he added, "I'll pick you up this afternoon. We'll do a follow-up check." He stood to leave. I couldn't stop myself. "Damien," he turned. My throat tightened, my heart squeezed hard enough to hurt. "Serena," I whispered. "Is she really pregnant?" My eyes clung to him, desperate, terrified, the hospital gown swallowing my frame. Damien's gaze softened. He stepped closer and stroked my cheek lightly with his fingertips. "Stop thinking nonsense," he murmured. "Rest." I swallowed. The question I wanted to ask most was stuck like a blade in my throat. "Is the baby hers? Yours?" But I couldn't say it. "She was brought in on time," Damien said instead. "She's fine." Then, casually, almost carelessly, he added the line that turned my blood cold. "Don't overthink it, even if there is something. It has nothing to do with you." I went still. Oh, so in his mind, what I needed was "don't take it personally," not "I didn't do anything wrong." He thought I was worried about the baby's safety. I smiled bitterly inside, and I pushed him away with the little strength I had left. "Go to your meeting," I said coldly. "Hurry." He didn't argue. He looked genuinely busy. He told me to rest one more time and left the room quickly. My thoughts tangled like yarn shredded by a cat. The more I lay there, the more unbearable it became. He said he'd pick me up this afternoon, and I absolutely, violently did not want him to find out I was pregnant, so I quietly called a nurse, did the discharge paperwork, changed clothes, and slipped out. Maybe it was the pregnancy. Maybe it was my body finally giving up. The moment I got home, I showered, climbed into bed, and fell into a deep, heavy sleep. When I woke, groggy, I heard movement outside. I rubbed my eyes, threw on a loose cardigan, and stepped out of the bedroom. "Awake?" Damien's voice came from the dining table. He was there. Damien stood by the table, turning to look at me. He wore a black shirt, sharp trousers, his usual clean, controlled style. Slim waist, broad shoulders, neat and perfect. But he was barefoot, and he was setting out bowls and chopsticks like he belonged in my kitchen. He walked 2 steps toward me, his gaze dropping instantly to my own bare feet on the cold tile. He frowned, turned back to the shoe cabinet, grabbed a pair of slippers and came back. Then, without hesitation, he crouched down in front of me, took my foot in his hand and slid the slipper on. The motion was so natural, so intimate, like nothing had happened in the past 2 weeks, like 2 years of marriage had never ended. My voice came out small. "Damien." He looked up at me, still holding my ankle, expression calm. And in that quiet, domestic moment, the kind I'd begged for in my marriage, my heart did the cruelest thing. It softened, even though I knew softness was what always killed me. I answered, because my throat still didn't trust itself. Then the question I'd been holding like a shard of glass finally slipped out. "When Serena came back, were you with her?" Damien finished sliding the slippers onto my feet, then guided me to sit beside the dining table as if we'd been doing this for years, as if we'd never signed those papers. "That night I worked overtime at the office until morning," he said. "I wasn't with her." "You're not lying." His gaze didn't flinch. "I've never lied to you." His fingers brushed my cheek, cool at first, then strangely warm, like the heat was coming from him and not from my skin. "Hannah," he said softly, "you just never wanted to believe me." I swallowed. He continued, slow and controlled, like he was laying evidence on a table. "Your birthday last year. I said I was on a business trip. That was true. I ran into Serena by coincidence. That same day, she asked me to recommend a lawyer. That's when we started contacting each other." My lips tightened. I didn't know who to believe anymore. But the moment the words left his mouth, A stupid part of me believed him anyway, like my heart had been trained to obey his voice. Still, Serena's vague, suggestive posts were thorns in my eyes. I suddenly remembered and stood up too fast, nearly dizzying myself. Wait! I hurried to grab my phone. I still had the screenshots Tessa had sent me, Serena's posts, each one dripping with implication. Look at this, I said, shoving the phone toward him. Damien skimmed them, silent for a moment, then pulled out his own phone and opened Serena's feed. Her settings only showed the last 6 months. But the pregnancy brag post, the one that said lucky to have him, it wasn't there, not deleted, hidden from him. Understanding hit me like cold water, even if Damien hadn't meant anything. Serena absolutely did. That day, she'd casually said things that made me assume he'd been with her all night. And now, looking back, I realized it wasn't true. It had never been true. Damien's expression darkened. Men hated this kind of twisted emotional chess. She probably just wants to stir up old feelings, I muttered, still sour. You were college friends. You were close. Old feelings. His voice was flat. What old feelings? I exhaled, then forced myself to explain. In college, she was the closest friend of your friend, the guy standing next to her in the photo, the one you said died. Damien's eyes sharpened, the way they did in boardrooms. He died in an accident, Damien said. Before he died, he asked me to look after Serena. He paused, jaw tightening slightly. And her husband in the US was violent, he added, voice colder. Cheated on her while she was pregnant. That's why I had the best lawyer in the group help her file an international divorce. Guilt prickled under my skin. My voice went small. I'm sorry. I thought the baby was yours. I kept thinking, nonsense. Damien looked annoyed. He pinched my cheek, hard enough to sting. Hannah, he said, eyes narrowing. I can barely handle you. Where would I find the time to go dreaming about anyone else? Ow. I swatted his hand, offended. It's clearly me who can't handle you, but his gaze shifted, from exasperation to something deep and unreadable. My stomach tightened. Instinct made my hand slide to my belly. Since I asked for divorce, we'd barely been intimate, and I knew this man's endurance far too well. If he truly wanted something, dinner on the table would get postponed without mercy. Damien didn't say another word. He just bent down and lifted me clean off the floor. My heartbeat punched my ribs. Damien, what are you doing? Taking you to the bedroom, he said calmly. You're not fully recovered. He laid me on the bed and leaned over me. His fingers moved toward the buttons of his own shirt. My entire brain screamed. I wrapped my arms around his waist and buried my face against his chest, voice tiny as dust. Wait! Damien! He froze. I swallowed, then forced the sentence out before I lost the courage. There's a baby in my belly. My lips trembled. I think we can't do that kind of thing right now, can we? His fingers stopped mid-button. The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear my own pulse. Nini, he murmured, soft, dangerous. His hand slid to the back of my neck, lifting my face so I couldn't hide. I'm not copying Serena, I blurted, terrified he'd misunderstand. And I can't copy pregnancy anyway. This is because you bullied me that night. That's why there's this little treasure. I dove back into his chest. His familiar scent made me feel safe and devastated at the same time. The last night we'd been together, there had been no protection left in the house. Damien had always been careful, obsessively careful, but that night he'd been different, rougher, more possessive. For the first time he hadn't insisted. He'd trusted my safe days, but life didn't care about calendars. Now, thinking back, maybe the news about Cole, breaking up with Jane and returning, had reached Damien's ears. That night, his intensity had been jealousy. A sweetness rose in my chest like a forbidden candy, and immediately after it came fear, Because what if it was only my imagination again? So that time you felt sick and fainted, it was because you were pregnant, he asked. His fingers stroked my hair slowly. Then his arms closed around me, tight enough to make me breathe him in. We only found out after you fainted, he said. The hospital confirmed it. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. Because I was angry, I whispered. Very, very angry. Then, like a child confessing a ridiculous fear, I muttered, I thought you already had a baby with Serena. Damien went still for half a second. His expression turned helpless, then unmistakably irritated. Hannah Hayes, he said, voice low. Does anything in your head ever line up with reality? What? I glared. I'm your husband. His eyes held mine. Other women have nothing to do with me. My heart stumbled. I stared at him, suddenly small, suddenly terrified of the answer. Then, tell me, I whispered. Did you marry me because you like me? I was completely lost now. If he said one gentle sentence, I'd probably let him sell me and still help him count the cash afterward. His answer came fast. Of course not. It felt like being slapped off a cloud and onto cold tile. I swallowed hard. Right. I was stupid to hope. Then Damien leaned on one arm beside my head and looked down at me, expression equal parts exasperation, and something softer he didn't know how to show. It's because you're an idiot, he said. And then, with the calm cruelty of a man who didn't realize how sharp his words were, Hannah, did you get a fever as a kid and burn your brain out? My mouth fell open. This man had everything. Skill, power, an entire empire on his shoulders. Even if our marriage smelled like politics, the final choice had still been his. He could have married any woman of equal status. My family. We weren't poor, but next to the Chengs, we were an ant staring up at a skyscraper. My father relied on Damien's money and connections to survive. I couldn't offer Damien anything except myself, and he dared to call me brain damaged. The outrage sparked something bright in me. I grabbed his sleeve, eyes lighting up like I'd discovered a scandal. Damien Cheng, I whispered fiercely. Don't tell me. You've secretly liked me this whole time. That's why you kept that photo, one that barely counts as a group shot. He didn't answer. He just lowered his head. The man who always spoke like he was reading a report suddenly cupped my face with both hands and stole the rest of my words with a deep kiss. I tried to protest, something petty, something stubborn, but his mouth locked mine down, his breath minty and familiar, like every memory I'd tried to bury. At first, the kiss was controlled. Then it grew deeper, wilder. His restraint snapped and remade itself into hunger. Within seconds, my head spun, my body melted, and all my thoughts shrank into a single, desperate instruction. Hold on, don't fall. Of course. We didn't go any further. Damien forced himself to stop. I lay face down on the pillow, ears burning, cheeks blazing like I'd caught a fever. Damien disappeared into the bathroom and turned on cold water full blast. I heard it pounding the tiles, violent, relentless, and I couldn't help it. I buried my face into the pillow and giggled, remembering him leaning over me, removing his glasses, kissing me until I couldn't breathe. The next morning, he drove me to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. The moment we stepped into obstetrics, before we even took a number, I saw a familiar figure. Serena Locke. She was holding her belly too, apparently there for a check. Her eyes lit up when she saw Damien, then instantly dulled when she noticed me beside him, masked and tucked under his arm, with his hand firm on my waist. Damien, she said, voice soft as whipped cream. She walked over with her perfect muse smile. I didn't like her, I never had, but Damien didn't loosen his hold on my waist even for a second. So, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. Serena spoke to him as if I weren't there. There's a college reunion in a few days, she said. Are you going? I haven't seen everyone in years. Damien's response was mild, almost bored. I probably can't. Why? Serena blinked. Work. Damien lowered his gaze to me. The corner of his mouth lifted, gentle in a way that made my chest ache. Because Nini is pregnant, he said. I want to spend more time with her. And then, deliberately, he reached down and touched my belly, a casual, intimate gesture. So intimate, even I froze. Serena's face went pale in a blink. Her eyes widened, panic flashing bare and ugly before she could hide it. Damien's smile was faint. Anything else, he asked. I'm taking Nini in. Damien! Serena called from behind as he guided me forward. Didn't you two get divorced? She let the sentence hang, her favourite trick. I didn't turn back. I didn't answer. If Serena's mess was a hole Damien dug, Damien could fill it himself. Damien stopped and turned, his voice dropping a few degrees. What exactly are you implying? His gaze pinned her. Or do you think I'm stupid enough to let someone play with me like a toy? Serena's eyes instantly turned wet. I didn't mean that, she whispered. I'm just worried you're being deceived. I tilted my head, sweet as sugar. My husband really should worry about being deceived, I said lightly. Don't you agree, Ms. Locke? Serena snapped her eyes to me, lips tightening. What do you mean by that, Ms. Hayes? I mean, I said, smiling at Damien instead of her, you just said you've known Damien for years. Serena's expression flickered. She realized too late she'd slipped, because the truth was simple. Serena and Damien's late friend had been a college romance. Damien's responsibility was a promise made to a dying friend, carried for years like a chain. Ms. Locke? Damien said clearly, voice calm but sharp. Hannah just found out she's pregnant. The doctor said she needs peace. No stress, no emotional shocks. His gaze didn't waver. So don't say ambiguous things in front of her again. He paused. And stop posting statuses designed to make people misunderstand. Serena's face drained. Damien didn't give her a chance to speak. He tightened his arm around my waist and walked me straight into the exam room. When we finished the tests and came back out, the waiting area was empty. Serena was gone. She won't show up in front of you again, Damien said, brushing a strand of hair from my temple. Then he looked at me like he was trying to learn a language he'd ignored for too long. Hannah, from now on, if something happens, you tell me first, okay? I lowered my eyes and smiled bitterly. You were always busy, I said softly. You came home late. When I woke up, you were gone. The time I actually saw you was pathetic. That was why he never knew what happened inside his own home. When his father was around, his mother stayed polite, but the moment the old man left, I became the punching bag for her moods and for Tessa's boredom. Damien watched me for a long moment. Then he pulled me into his chest without warning. I've had the Maygarden villa prepared, he said into my hair. Starting today, we live there. Just us. I jerked my head up. Damien, you're the eldest. Tessa's been sent abroad. Your parents only have you left. Before, I wasn't good enough, he interrupted, voice low. I married you and didn't protect you. I let you swallow too many humiliations. His thumb wiped at the corner of my eye. Hannah, I'm sorry. My tears broke loose instantly, even as I tried to swallow them. I don't blame you, I whispered, shaking my head. I wasn't good enough either. If I were more mature, more sensible, maybe your mother would have liked me. That doesn't matter, Damien said, firm as a vow. It's enough that I like you. The words sounded soft as cotton candy, and they stabbed the softest place in my heart. He kept wiping my tears with his thumb, and the more he wiped, the harder I cried. Damien, I whispered, voice shaking. Am I too childish, too stupid? I can't be like other wives, gentle, steady, capable. You don't need to be like anyone, he said, and a small smile tugged at his mouth. You only need to be Hannah Hayes. I pouted through my tears. That's easy to say, I muttered. You used to forbid me from dyeing my hair. You forbade short skirts. You hated shorts. Damien actually laughed. Quiet, warm. He leaned down and kissed the damp corner of my eye, his straight nose rubbing against mine in a way that felt unbearably intimate. Idiot, he murmured. What husband wants his wife dressing like that and letting other people stare? He paused. Then his expression softened. But I was wrong before, he admitted. From now on, wear whatever you want. If you like it, I won't interfere. He didn't tell me the other reason yet. The reason tied to a past I'd forgotten too easily. In college, I'd been loud and bright, dyed hair, short skirts, sneakers, laughing across campus like the world belonged to me. Cole Huxley had been the perfect match beside me. Hoodie, headphones, limited edition shoes, the kind of boy who looked like trouble and freedom. And one day, in the stadium stands, a man stood far away and watched us for a long time. Years later, when our families arranged that blind date, I didn't know that long before it. Damien had already stepped quietly into my life. He'd switched my stylist. He'd dropped careful suggestions into my father's ear. Piece by piece, he'd guided me from a loud, dyed hair, hot girl into a black-haired, long-dress Hannah that looked like the perfect good wife. I always thought it was because he liked soft, feminine women. Later I understood. He didn't love long dresses, he just wanted to erase every trace of Cole from me, because in Damien Cheng's eyes, anything that belonged to my past with another man was unacceptable. Damien looked down at the small girl in his arms. The girl who once held a stuffed rabbit in the rain outside her mother's grave. Tears mixed with rainwater, stubborn and heartbreakingly pitiful. The girl who had softened his heart and carved herself into his memory for years. Now she was his wife. Soon she would be the mother of his child. Let her stay innocent, he thought. Let the heavy things be mine. I'll carry them. I'll be the roof over her head. I looped my arms around his neck and shook him playfully, forcing a pout. So you were jealous back then, weren't you? Damien, admit it. Were you jealous? You were afraid people would see my tiny waist and long legs, right? He lowered his gaze to my belly, barely showing, just the slightest curve, and the corner of his mouth lifted. Tiny waist, he murmured. Are you sure you still have one? The teasing whisper by my ear made my hackles rise instantly. That's because of the baby. You're not allowed to call me fat just because I'm pregnant, understood? I stuck my belly out like I was proving a point. Damien Cheng, even if I get chubby later, you have to like me. You must like me. He grabbed my hand, helpless laughter in his throat. Careful, he said. The baby might hear you and laugh at how dramatic its mother is. It's the size of a bean, I huffed. What can it laugh at? But my fingers tightened around his, weaving with his until we were locked together. Damien Cheng, cold, strict, never vulgar, never losing composure, even when I accidentally blurted something a little dirty, he only frowned. He didn't scold me, he didn't look disgusted, and for the first time, I realized something that made my heart skip hard. With me, he was learning how to be human. In that moment, it hit me. There had always been 100 tiny proofs that Damien had been patient with me. I was just too busy drowning in my own fear to notice. He tolerated my mood swings, my sharp tongue, my messy habits, the way I tripped over air and still acted like it was the floor's fault. He wasn't home often, but no matter how late he returned, he would bend down and kiss me, whether I was awake or dead asleep. And every morning, before he left for the office, he'd press a quiet kiss to my forehead like a ritual. For 2.5 years, I'd been his legal wife, yet I rarely woke up with him, rarely made breakfast, rarely fixed his tie like movie wives did so effortlessly. Maybe I hadn't deserved him. I'd magnified every grievance, every suspicion, and deliberately ignored how much he carried for me, how my insecurity stole my joy and dragged him, already suffocating under work, into my pointless storms. The second I got into the car, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Husband," I whispered, and threw myself into his arms. I almost never called him that. Usually it was Mr. Cheng or CEO Cheng. Only when he teased me in bed and forced the word out of me did I say it, blushing. Now I buried my face against his chest, listening to his steady breathing, letting the sweetness swallow the leftover ache. This was my man, my husband, my baby's father, and for the first time I admitted it plainly. My luck had been outrageous.